It's time for Branding Business, the only show that brings branding experts and corporate executives together to explore how branding your business can improve both your top-line growth and bottom-line performance. Brought to you by Rikus Baird. And now here's your host.
Welcome to Branding Business. I'm Ray Baird from Rikus Baird, and today we're pleased and excited to have Brett Knox with us. And Brett is the Senior Vice President of Marketing from ABM. And welcome to Branding Business, Brett.
Thanks, Ray.
Today we're going to cover, I think, a really interesting subject, one of my favorite subjects, and I've been working with Brett ABM for about a year and a half on the subject of rebranding. And I approached Brett, and ABM to come on our show because what's really unique about this opportunity and for our listeners is that ABM is over 100 years old, and they've done some remarkable things in their overall kind of business and overall growth. And about a year and a half ago, we were approached by them to, kind of think about their overall brand and how to about take it into the future. And by having, a worldwide global brand of, 100,000 employees, there was a lot of interesting experience. So I asked Brett to come join us and to talk through rebranding and how people can learn from our overall kind of experiences. So one of the big questions as I talk to people about ABM is, and the first question, Brett, maybe you can talk a little bit about is, you're a 100-year-old company. Why now was a time to rebrand? And maybe talk a little bit about, the situation with ABM and the thoughts around rebranding from moving forward.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Ray. ABM's really an amazing company. It's the oldest, largest company that no one's ever heard of. And when we had Rikus Baird perform market research for us, that really came out loud and clear. And as you said, Ray, being a $4 billion company with over 100,000 employees that maintains services, improves buildings and large facilities, you would think you'd have heard of ABM, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. And as you mentioned about how long we've been in the business, we started in 1909, and it's an interesting story because we started out as a window cleaning company, and then we began adding services such as janitorial services, then we added security, we added parking. So we became to really develop a comprehensive set of services for building and facility owners. But what really happened and caused us to look at this was several years ago, we actually made several very strategic and transformational acquisitions that dramatically changed the company because we were able to obtain numerous technical services in the U.S. as well as globally. And these services included capabilities such as energy solutions where we could guarantee energy savings. We have technicians now that can maintain and service baggage handling and elevators and do complete LED lighting retrofits. And with all of that change and these very technical services and having this global reach, we knew that we needed to rebrand ABM to illustrate this transformation so that the market would look at ABM in an entirely new light. And that really was the basis, Ray, for us wanting to rebrand the company after 100 years.
Yeah, I think a lot of, as we look at businesses, a lot of them that arrive at our doorstep have become something different. Merger, acquisitions, new services, and I think when organizations have a trouble kind of describing themselves or really having a very succinct way to differentiate in the marketplace, those discussions come about. And I think those were some of the discussions we had. How do we best, kind of illustrate all these new services and what does that brand become? And those questions kind of led to really kind of, the next question that I'd like to ask. When approaching, for our listeners, when approaching a rebranding project, there's a lot of things to consider. What are some of the top things, going through that process here in the last year and a half, what are some of the top things that you think that our listeners really got to think about when they're going to enter a rebranding project like you have?
Well, it's a really good question, Ray, and there really are several things that we've learned, and obviously you guys helped us tremendously with in this process. But I think first and foremost, it starts with the leadership team. Depending on the size of the company, you really have to have everybody on board. And I literally mean that. It can't be just the head of sales or just the CEO. You need everybody in your leadership team to be excited about this and really to buy into it, or it will fail, because we all know that everything starts from the top of the organization and works its way down. And so I would say executive sponsorship and ownership, it really starts there, and to be successful, it's the only way to make that happen.
Well, I tell you, if I could just, jump in on that point, people always ask me the questions, what's the thing that, the number one thing that can go wrong? And exactly what you said, if you don't have the buy-in of the leadership and not just make it, the marketing department, but it's really the executive leadership as a part of it, we always find that to be, a troubling overall kind of occurrence when you don't have that buy-in. So I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, I think another one is from what I've learned, and fortunately we did at the beginning, is to have an inside-out strategy. In other words, if your employees do not understand your brand, they don't understand why you're doing it, they don't understand your end goal, it's really a struggle. And what I mean fully by the inside out is starting with the employees. Once the employees are understanding it, you move to your clients or customers. Then you can move to the broader marketplace. And then ultimately, if you're a public company, it makes its way to your shareholders. So I think that was another vital thing, and particularly with 100,000 employees, that's not an easy task, and we continue to educate on a daily basis. But from what we've seen, that has really, really been successful using that strategy.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, most of the people always, think about, brand as from an external standpoint, really the facing, but from an inside standpoint, having the employees really understanding that. And it's not just about, about the logo, although, we did a lot of work in terms of the logo and the overall kind of creative work, but it was really the business. What is the business about? Where is it going, and how does it affect them? Which I think is a good point to make here. Talk about a little bit about when you're approaching the rebranding, some other things that, the listeners want to keep on top of mind when they're going through this process. Yeah,
I think another thing to make sure you do is develop a core team of people that is your rebranding team. And what I've seen is people make the mistake that the head of marketing goes and does all of this work without bringing in the other marketing leaders and sales leaders from your other divisions or business units, however broad you are, because when you really need that buy-in at a deep level, and your sales and marketing leaders at the next rung down below your exec team are absolutely critical to building the excitement, the momentum, and the messaging. So I think that's really, really important to have that core team.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Oh, well, go ahead. I was going to kind of bridge into another thought, but go ahead, Ray.
Well, as that overall kind of the idea that, through the rebranding kind of process, that the core team and how you establish that. One of the things that I thought was interesting in the process that we threw, that was very multidisciplined. And we had a lot of thought around, who are the champions that are really for this? Who are some of the people that, that may be on kind of the fence, and how you created an overall team that really became sponsors throughout the organizations. And there's, the round tables and the discussions through the organization. So I just wanted to comment around when you're building those overall teams, they need to have departmental kind of leaders, because the best way that brands are really internalized, is the internal communication that really makes that happen.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And kind of going with that, another ancillary topic around that is communication. And it's interesting because, again, taking this top-down approach, we took the strategy of getting that buy-in in several ways. When we, Ray, worked together on this, I think it was effective in that the sequence of events that we did was we first got that leadership team together and went through our strategy, what we were trying to accomplish, kept them engaged. And once we got them involved and got their agreement, we actually went down then to the next level in the organization of leadership. Got them also on board, got their input. And it was interesting because once we had those two core sets, then we went to the board of directors. And because we knew that we had confidence that across the board, everyone was very, very excited about it, and we could convey that to the board of directors. So if you're a public company, I think that is one thing to make sure you do, because obviously some of the board members do know some of the executive team, and they will reach out to find out how things are going. And then, as you said, when you take your leadership and everyone's on board, now we have our core team. Now it's really proliferating that communication down. And as we talked about, Ray, during this process, how important it was to communicate on a periodic basis to the masses. So we actually were providing biweekly updates to all employees. We'd send out rebranding updates to everyone that had email addresses, and we used some other mechanisms for communicating that update so that it didn't become just this big event that was 6 months later and nobody had any idea what was going on. So I think as we looked at it, that ongoing communication made the actual launch so successful because we teased them along the way. We gave them little snippets of things that were coming so that people really, there was an anticipation there that I think was very successful, Ray.
Yeah, I think it was masterful, especially as we got feedback, from the entire organization once the rebrand was launched. What's interesting from my point of view and for the leaders, the first part about getting the leaderships and the buy-in, the second, your inside-out strategy, and making sure that everybody's involved. People want to get involved. Getting the core team to merchandise, this overall thought and communicating. What's really kind of a trip is that we really haven't even talked about the brand. We're really talking about the business. We're talking about the communication. We're talking about the buy-in. And so many people think about, well, rebranding. Hey, I got to have a new logo. I got to have a new tagline. I got to have a new look and feel. Well, those are all things, but it's really about the business strategy and the communication. But now I'd like for you to talk about, kind of the magic, because I think, when building overall kind of brands, you've got to really keep it simple, trying to get a simple idea that people can grab onto. So talk a little bit about the creativity, the experience with the creativity, and maybe even talk, the idea that was generated here and how you were even actually being able to trademark that. That might be kind of interesting for our listeners.
Yeah, it was. It was a great process, and really hats off to Rika Spaird's design team, because what really was a great process is, to your point, we wanted simplicity, but we also wanted a little of intrigue in the logo and ultimately in our tagline. And when we worked with Rika Spaird on the overall creativity and what we were looking for, and obviously they had a lot of input into it as well, that we wanted something that was simple, but we weren't opposed to something that would cause a little bit of a double take and make people kind of look again. And though the audience can't see anything because this is obviously all audio, on our logo we have what we call our M person, which imagine an M with a round circle above it. And it was interesting when that came forward, we actually bounced it by people, and about 80% of folks picked up on it that it was a person. And then other people, the smaller percentage, said, well, is it a mountain with a sun? And that's not a bad thing because people can look at it, and we want them to want to take a harder look at it. And then once we had that by itself, it just didn't do what we needed, and we really wanted a tagline that could convey what we do. And fortunately, when we worked with your team, Ray, when you guys came up with the building value as our tagline, it was just awesome because of the double entendre that it represents in terms of representing the assets of the building that we are increasing in value as well as the value we bring every day was awesome, because when you develop your tagline, if you're going to do a tagline or your brand messaging, it's so important that you have something that allows you the creativity and the flexibility to build on that to convey the messaging that you're looking for. So for us, think about building value for your clients, for your employees, building value through our energy solutions, through our 100 years of experience. A lot of flexibility in that, and it's really important, I would say, that kind of bleeds into another point that I'd like to make, is that when you're looking for a brand agency and a real partner, I'm just going to tell you, take your time and find a partner that wows you, that really is going to understand and want to take the time to get to know your business, where you're going with your business in the next 5 years, what are the core strategies. Because if your agency doesn't understand that and they don't get it, you're not going to get the not just the logo, which, as you said, Ray, is just really, to me, the logo just illustrates a change. That's what it does. It's a graphical element. That's all it is. It's really the meaning behind that, the culture you're changing, the messaging you're changing, and that's why I said your partner in your agency is absolutely critical. And fortunately, and this isn't a commercial, but Ricus Baird did a fantastic job of understanding our business. And I would say if you're not comfortable with the folks you're talking to, keep looking.
Well, I think it's a good point. It comes down to chemistry, right? I mean, there's a lot of different options that are out there, but people that want to work side by side and are excited about, the idea about building value became an idea that was broad enough to tell great stories, but narrow enough to really drill down into your overall specifics, as the business. So, sometimes you get lucky and you create a great idea, and sometimes, you got to work really hard to find something that works. But it's around the chemistry of working back and forth. With the remaining time, I thought it'd be really interesting to get, besides the process and the things we talked about here, is what was there any surprises? And a last piece of advice that for the listeners out here, any surprises through this process that that caught you off guard, good or bad, and then maybe one last piece of advice for the listeners that are thinking about going through a rebranding process.
Yeah, I think, well, first thing on surprises, it's interesting because I didn't answer your prior question about trademarking, et cetera. It's interesting because when Ricus Baird came up with building value, our legal folks had felt concerned that we wouldn't be able to trademark it because there were some variations out there. And we really felt strongly about it and really pushed forward through that. And ultimately, we trademarked it. We were able to copyright it. And so I would tell you as advice, be sure and push to get your trademark done regardless of what folks may be telling you in terms of your probability of success. And I don't think it was a surprise to me because I've been through trademarking before, but there were others that were very surprised we were able to get it. But a couple of other things on surprise I'd say is don't underestimate how long it takes to rebrand. As you can imagine, with 100,000 employees and thousands of vehicles and office locations, I wish I had a magic wand that I could tell you and provide to you, but there's not. It's just you got to keep pushing through, work through the logistics, and it will get done. And the other surprise was don't underestimate how many things have been branded in your organization. You cannot fathom how many cubicle name signs that have logos and special stickers and special posters. I mean, brands proliferate, so just be aware of it. Make sure you kind of inventory what things are out there and then rely on your agency to help you on the creative side. And let's see, I guess pieces of advice, let's see, I can't narrow it to one, I don't think, but I'll give you a couple. One of them is, and these are kind of a summary, I think, of things that we've talked a little bit about. One, sell your rebranding collaboratively. You know, it's not a one-person thing. It's about you as the leader, be passionate, help people understand, educate them, and you will get the masses very, very excited. As I mentioned before, I think number two is, pick the right brand agency as your partner. That is just critical to this. The chemistry, that's a great word, Ray. Make sure the chemistry's there. And then the last one, I would say, thank that core rebranding team that you formulate publicly and often. Everyone has day jobs, everyone in your organization. And when you rebrand, it's an extra amount of work that people are going to do. And it's really important to recognize them because at the end of the day, it's a team effort. I think it's just vital to do that.
Oh, that's some great advice. The one thing that I think I'll remember too is, there is no magic wand. It is a business. It's a strategy and a process. And celebrating, the wins with people. It should be a fun experience, right? It should be something that you're very proud of. And for those of the listeners that want to see a fantastic job on rebranding a company that's a 100+ multi-billion-dollar company with literally thousands of different touch points, I encourage you to visit ABM. And Brett, thank you for sharing the rebranding experience. There's nothing like it for our listeners to hear somebody that has gone through it and that is going through it as a part of an overall journey and a great success story. And we're really happy to be a partner in the overall process. And thank you to the listeners for tuning into to Branding Business. We always love to hear your feedback and your suggestions for future shows. And until the next show, we wish you all the best in branding your business.
You've been listening to Branding Business, the only show that brings branding experts and corporate executives together to explore how branding your business can improve both your top-line growth and bottom-line performance. To hear more, simply visit our website, brandingbusiness.com, or tune in next week to learn how you too can build your brand and move your business forward. Brought to you by Ricus Baird.